on your best behaviour too, or not.
Anyway, Gareth Gates famously overcame his stammer to launch a music career. Now, while his career might not be successful, he did successfully overcome a stammer that had affected his entire life. Two people who have taken on and dealt with their stammer through the McGuire Programme join us now. Sharon Gavillet and Giuseppe Fallone, you're very welcome to the show. So, Sharon, you say you've always had a stammer. Why do you think it came about?
Well, I was always aware I had a stammer, but I changed schools when I was about 10 years of age and came from a all-girls school into a mixed school.
Was it the boys that did it?
Possibly. But I definitely became a lot more conscious of my speech around that time, and it became very hard to speak in class and answer questions.
Were you getting, you know, because you were 10 and people were more aware of people's different isms, were you getting slagged off because you were the new girl in a new school?
Not really. I suppose it was my own embarrassment, really. I could feel the difference in my speech, and I was trying to hide it as much as I could, so by becoming a lot more quiet and, you know, not speaking out, that was my way of trying to hide the fact that I stammered.
And do you think it's fear that brings on a stammer, or do you think it's something more medical?
I don't think it's a medical situation, but it's definitely a fear of people seeing you stammer. You don't want to be speaking and blocking on words, and you seeing the embarrassment in other people's faces while you're struggling to speak.
So do you think it's psychological, ultimately?
Yeah, possibly. There is definitely a psychological feel to it, where you remember situations that you've struggled in your speech, and when you go into that situation again, you remember the negative part of that situation, and that just fuels the fear you have then. So that it's just a cycle that will continue then.
Did you stop school early because of it?
I finished secondary school, but didn't go on to third level education. Although I enjoyed school, but I certainly didn't enjoy having to go through each class waiting to see if I was going to have to speak up. So after secondary school I left and got a job, and I've been working since.
Yeah, but you were kind of weaving your way through situations that you wouldn't have to speak that much.
Absolutely.
It's all about avoidance tactics, really, isn't it, when it comes to
everything
the
is avoidance,
Okay, for anybody watching, they don't think you have a stammer because you found a way to master it and get the better of it. What made you decide you wanted to get the better of it?
Well, I suppose all through my life I've had to try and hide it for myself. I didn't want people to know I stammered, so I would do certain things and avoid situations. But particularly bad speaking situation I had around 2010 made me realise I couldn't continue.
What happened?
Well, I was in a work environment where I was in a meeting, and there was different people in this meeting that I wouldn't have really known, so I had to stand up and introduce myself and explain a bit about myself and my role, and my name always gave me a lot of struggle, and I'd say I struggled for possibly 60 seconds or so saying my name.
Which is a long time.
Which is a long time when you're sitting in a room full of people you're not very friendly with, or you wouldn't really know. And a work colleague said my name for me to try and get me through that block, and once she said that, I was fine and I was very fluent in the rest of my conversation. But I suppose during the whole meeting then, I was more focused on, people must think I'm a little crazy that I couldn't say my name, but then I was very fluent for the rest of the conversation.
Now, when Sharon first joined the McGuire Programme, she had to do an interview to demonstrate how bad her stammer was. Now, she's allowed us to show a short piece of it, so let's have a look.
My name is... Sharon.
term on it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Big
And
change.
look at you now. I mean, I must say, I must applaud the pair of you, because it's not easy to come on television and speak so freely as well, you know, having gone through everything you've gone through. Giuseppe, tell us about your experience.
Well, similar to Sharon's, it affected me from a young age, and particularly at primary school. It wasn't so much of an issue, but they had that dread of going to secondary school, really out of our comfort zone. So it was really difficult moving from primary school into...
I know for anybody moving from primary to secondary school,
Yeah.
it's a big deal. It's a bigger deal for a boy, because we don't like change. But for somebody like you, it's immense.
And with a name like mine, and everyone interested in a strange name,
Giuseppe Fallone.
That's a great name.
Having to say your name, just the dread of every class, especially at the start with new teachers, new pupils in the class. It was really embarrassing, a lot of struggle, and from the word go, people associated me with my stammer. But as I said, I never let that stop me from being who I wanted to be, but it did affect the decisions.
Well, I'm sure it's a bit of a vicious cycle, because, you know, once it starts, then your confidence starts being eroded, and then you have less and less confidence.
Exactly.
At what point did you say, well, I want to break this, I need some help here?
It was whenever I started a family, and I had my first child, and the second child was on the way, and it just, for years, I had become very dependent on my wife, and I just had this vision of myself being dependent on the kids and getting them to make phone calls for me and things like that, and then them going to school and parent-teacher meetings and doctors and all those things kind of made me realise, right, I just have to really do it for the children and for myself. But
So you did this programme as well?
yeah, I joined it 6 years ago.
What is it exactly? It's called the McGuire Programme.
Yeah.
What does it do?
Well, it's not a cure. It's we learn a new technique. We learn how to use our costal diaphragm instead of our crural diaphragm, because the fear is built up there. So by breathing differently and speaking with only so many words per breath and just slowing it down and pausing is very important. Whereas before we always rushed into speaking situations to get it over with as soon as possible. So
I remember growing up, and my sister had a stammer. And my dad used to always say to her when she was struggling to try and say her words, he used to say, sing it. Just sing it. And is that down to the breath as well, Sharon?
Well, when you're singing, you would use your costal diaphragm. So by using that, you get to take a bigger breath in, that your diaphragm won't freeze when you go and speak or sing. So that's what helps you to keep the control then in your speech.
Because what she did was she learned, she would sing her word, but of course then it sounded a bit silly. It sounded as if you were living in a musical. But she learned how to master that, and she made singing sound like speaking. This is something similar.
yeah, well, similar in a way. Yeah, using voice
You must feel like
projection.
singing now.
Yeah, well, yeah, project your voice, and it's more powerful. Whereas before we would have spoke very low and tried to keep our voice as low as possible. But now we control the stammer. The stammer doesn't control us.
So what advice would you give to somebody out there who is struggling with a stammer and needs help?
Well, I just wish when I was young I had the opportunity to do it sooner. Like, I knew about it a long time before I'd done it, but at the same time it has to be something that you want to do, because it is a lot of commitment and a lot of work. It's not something you go on for a quick fix. Like I say, I'm on it 6 years and still working. I'm a work in progress.
Well, I tell you what, the pair of you are doing a brilliant job. You're an inspiration to everybody. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah, very brave. You wouldn't know. You really wouldn't know. Thank you both.
Now, don't forget, if you've missed any of the programme, you can catch it online at tv3.ie/3player.
Now on the show tomorrow, against the odds, Regina Bushell has built a successful business from the ground up, but behind the Athlone woman's steely determination lies tragedy, having coped with breast cancer and the death of her 7-year-old daughter. She'll be telling us how she coped and the importance of positivity.
The Midday Girls are up next, and we'll be back here tomorrow at 11 a.m.
See you then. Bye-bye.